Crystal. Grab a cup of coffee and join me as I discuss how to prepare for a vendor fair. But first, let's talk about why you should even do a vendor fair in the first place. So first of all, it's a great way to meet new readers. There are potentially hundreds of people who are walking into this vendor fair where you can get your name out, or they can at least see the covers of your books. So it's a great way to meet new people. Secondly, if you're not comfortable selling your books or you've never done it in person before, vendor fairs are the best place to start. This is because anyone who walks into a vendor fair is ready to spend money. They're there because they want to buy things for themselves or they want to buy things for other people. They have cash, they have their credit card, sometimes checks, whatever it is that you'll take, they are willing to spend money. Which, speaking of money, vendor fairs are also a great way to make money. I've made anywhere between $100 to $500 at a vendor fair. And if you think about it, some vendor fairs are 3 to 6 hours. So the amount of money that you're making per hour is significantly good. So I would highly suggest thinking of doing vendor fairs if you are an author. All right, so let's talk about what you need to do in order to prepare for the vendor fair. First things first, you need to find one. I would highly suggest starting with Facebook. It's a great way to search for local vendors and local vendor fairs and craft fairs. Or you can ask friends and family. Ask around and see if they go to any in your local area. You don't need to travel far. They're taking place all over. There are a lot of vendor and craft fairs at churches or local community centers. So start looking there. Once you find one, you need to sign up and then hold your reservation by paying a small amount of money. It's usually anywhere between $25 to $40, depending on the length of the vendor fair. Like I said, this is just to reserve your spot. Once you found one, you've reserved your spot, you paid your money, then you need to think about what you would like to have at the vendor fair. First of all, you need your books. I'm an indie author and I buy books through Amazon. So what I do is I go to kdp.com and I will click on author copies and then I'll buy a certain amount of copies. But you might need to buy them somewhere else, wherever it is that you are printing your books. Get them there and then make sure you have plenty of time. I would suggest about a month ahead, at least a month ahead of time, to make sure you have your copies. Because a lot of times, you know, whether it's Amazon or another company, they'll tell you you'll have your books by a certain day and then it still takes them longer to print your copies. So give them plenty of time so that the vendor fair day doesn't come and you have nothing. You don't want that to happen. But you don't just want your books, because sometimes at vendor fairs you'll meet people who aren't interested in print copies. They'll be interested in an ebook copy. So hopefully your bookmark or your business card will have some of that information on there where they can get the ebook. So make sure you have bookmarks and or business cards. And it's not just about your ebooks. Hopefully you have your website, your Facebook page, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever it is, wherever you have your social media accounts, you want that information on your bookmarks and business cards as well, because hopefully people who buy your books at the vendor fair will enjoy your books so much that they want your next one. So when your next release is out, you want an easy way for people to find you and connect with you in the future. You also need to think about your display. What do you want your table to look like? Most of the vendor fairs I do give you a 6-foot table. So you want to buy a tablecloth. I would highly suggest black. Most of the vendors there have black tablecloths, and then you can dress it up. This is the point in time where you also need to think about your branding. So the table, what do you want it to look like? You want them to walk by your table and have a pretty good guess as to what genre of books you write. Same thing goes for your clothes. Think about what you'll wear to make you look like that type of genre author. So for instance, I write sweet and wholesome romance. When I do vendor fairs, I typically wear pink or some sort of floral shirt with, like with flowers on it. That makes me look sweet and wholesome. Same thing goes for my hair. I usually wear it straight or curled. But if you write mystery or suspense, you might want to wear black. You might want to tie your hair back, make you look a little more mysterious. Don't make people guess. A lot of people going into vendor fairs might not realize that you're the author. I get that a lot. They start looking at my books and they go, wait a minute, you're the author? they'll be shocked. They're not expecting an author to be there because, let's face it, a lot of authors don't do vendor fairs. This is an unexplored niche, and this is exactly why I want you to be at vendor fairs, because people are genuinely interested in your books, especially because a lot of these people coming in, they want to buy local. And guess what? You're that local author who has these books. And sometimes, even if people don't read a lot, they want to buy books because they just want to support a local author, which is fabulous. In addition, you also need to create a newsletter sign-up sheet or a sign-up sheet for your Facebook reader group, because, like I said earlier, this is not just about that weekend. It's about the future, your next book, your next release. You want people, if they like your books, you want it to be easy for readers to find you, to find out that you have a new book that they can buy, and that they can contact you and find out how they can get your next book. So make sure you have some sort of sign-up sheet that people can have. Lastly, before the event, you want to post on social media. So I would say a couple weeks to a week to then a couple days ahead of time, post on social media that you'll be at this event. Don't just make it about you and your books though. Don't tell people that you'll be there with your books, come buy a copy. No. You also want to make it about them. It's always about them, right? Even when you're writing a book, you're writing for people to read and enjoy what you do. So make sure that when you're posting that you know what other vendors will be there. Tell people that there are some great vendors with some great products, and this would be a good opportunity for them to buy, say, a Mother's Day gift if it's around Mother's Day, or if it's around Christmas. A lot of vendor fairs I do are around anywhere between October and December. I think that's the best time to do a vendor fair, because that's the point in time where people are starting to look for Christmas. So even if they don't like to read, they'll maybe buy your books because they'll want to give your book as a Christmas present, and it's really cool because then you get to sign a personalized copy for that person. Okay, so that should help you prepare for the event. But what do you do during the event? I would come 30 minutes to an hour before the event. It depends on your display. How long will it take you to set up? Some of these vendors have a ton of products, so they're definitely there at least an hour ahead of time preparing their display. However, I only have 4 books, so I show up about 30 minutes ahead of time. My display is really easy. I have crates that I use in my display, and to go along with that display again, the crates I bought I think were either from Michael's or Hobby Lobby, and I painted them pink. Once again, because I write sweet and wholesome romance. So it's really easy to prepare my table and to get started. I would also suggest standing. There are some vendor fairs I've been to where about half of the vendors are just sitting on their butt talking on their cell phone. I don't know about you, but if I were shopping and I walked by that table, I wouldn't even look at their products, because they're not obviously passionate about what they have at their table if they're just sitting there using that opportunity to text people. Absolutely not. Even the long vendor fairs, try to stand most of the time. I understand you can't do it the entire time, especially if you see a lull or people aren't there yet. That's fine. But if there is a large amount of people walking by your table, please stand. It will make you more recognizable. People will see you and want to know what you have to offer at your table. I would also suggest talking to everyone. Don't let anyone walk by your table without at least saying something to them. But if you've never done a vendor fair, what could you possibly say to them? My number one question, excuse me, my number one question is, do you like to read? This always tends to stop people in their tracks. They're like, wait, what? Do I like to read? Yes, I do. Or no, or I just don't have a lot of time to read anymore. No matter what it is, it does stop them. It brings them to your table. If they say they like to read, my next question is, what do you typically like to read? The reason I do this is because if they like romance, then I can lead them to my small town romance series. However, if they say, I don't typically read romance, that's okay too, because I have love story collections, which are a mix of weddings, engagements, tragic circumstances, and breakups, and not all the couples end up together. And I have a lot of people who don't typically like to read romance who like my love story collections. You may not be able to ask the same thing, but you can at least get an idea of what they like to read to talk about your books. You may say, well, this might not be something for you. However, let me just tell you a little bit about my books. Feel them out. You can see if someone is not interested or not. So if they look really interested, keep going. If they don't seem interested, then maybe ask them some personal questions about them just to get to know them. This is not just about selling your books. This is about getting to know new potential readers, and I'll come back to that in a second. Another thing that you could say is, I'm a local author. Would you be interested in looking at my books? Once again, this is because the people walking through this vendor fair want to buy local. So if they find out you're a local author, they'll be more interested in you. You could also say, I'm running a giveaway today. Would you be interested in signing up for that? So you could run any giveaway. One thing I would not give away for free though is your books. This is because you'll have some people who will sign up for your giveaway and then they won't buy your books because they'll say, well, I'll just wait and see if I win your giveaway first. So give away something else. And if you're wondering on what to do as far as giveaways, find my next video and you'll be able to see what you could do for that. Also, be kind. This is the most important piece of advice that I could give you. Why? This is because sometimes when people say they're not interested in your books or they say no, this just means not yet. What I'm saying here is no means not yet. Still be kind to people. Don't just shut off if they're not interested in your books. Be genuinely interested in talking to them, getting to know them. Where are you from? Have you been to this vendor fair before? Are you finding some good things? Okay? Don't shut down. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who say they don't read a lot, they're not interested in books, but then they stay there and we have a good conversation. They go on to other vendors and they shop, and before I know it, they're back at my table saying, you know what, I thought of so-and-so. I would love to buy a book for them. Why did they come back to my table? Well, they may actually be interested in the books, or they liked me. They genuinely had a good conversation and they wanted to support me. This can be you. Even if they're not interested in what you write, still be nice, be kind, and they'll think about that. They'll remember that, and they'll be grateful that they had a conversation with you. Also, be grateful and courteous to the people who organize the event. Walk up at the end of the event, shake their hand, and say, thanks so much for organizing this. I had a great time. Because they're going to be really excited that you had a good time. They want vendors to do well there, and it goes a long way. For instance, I forgot to sign up for a vendor fair that I typically do every year, and I had the organizer of the event message me saying, hey, did you forget? Do you want to still do it? They wanted me there. That meant so much to me, and I think it's because I have established a good relationship with them. I want the same thing for you. Not every vendor is walking up at the end and shaking their hand and thanking them for organizing the event. So stand out. Be you, be genuine, and stand out. All right, so that's all I would suggest as far as being at the vendor fair. But you have a little bit more work to do. After the vendor fair is over, you have this newsletter sign-up sheet, right? Or a sign-up sheet for your Facebook group. So you want to utilize that. Make sure within the week after the vendor fair, you've signed up these new newsletter recipients or these new Facebook people. If you have people signing up for your newsletter, you probably have their first and last name anyway. Try to find them on Facebook, friend them. Once again, not thinking about that particular weekend, but thinking about your next book release in the future. Make sure they have some sort of way to contact you and know about your next release. Lastly, you need to document sales. This is also something I'll talk about in a future video, but you want to make sure that you're documenting how many books you sold and how much money you made. This is also a great way for you to look back when you're looking at your sales in the last year to see, did that vendor fair do well? Some vendor fairs you'll do super well, some won't be as good. It just depends on the weather, it depends on timing. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, but keep at it. I really think vendor fairs are the way to go, especially if you're an indie author. You meet so many people, and how much fun is it to meet readers face to face and talk to them? All right, so that's it for this video. I hope that you learned some great tips for how to prepare for a vendor fair, and I really hope you do it. I think it's a great opportunity for you. Thanks so much for joining me today, and happy reading. Happy reading, happy writing.